appreciate everybody joining. I still see that there's a few of you just kind of trickling in now, but I'm going to get started because we have quite a bit to cover today. So again, name is John. I run the sales and marketing department here at ADEM and GP365. So this webinar is on workflow, and it's the first webinar we've done on workflow. And I'm particularly excited about it as I think this is an area that a lot of you can probably get value from that maybe you're currently not using, the system the way you could. So we're going to go over a few common examples. I think one mainly today of what we see as one of the most beneficial workflows out there that a lot of organizations aren't using. And Sam, if I'm not mistaken, your workflow is going to be so good that it'll allow everybody to take Fridays off from now on. Is that fair?
I can't guarantee that, but sure.
No?
It'll make your Fridays a lot
sales
easier.
Guy, am I overcommitting?
Yeah, overcommitting.
Yeah.
So I gotta think, well,
So a few housekeeping items here before we get started. So first of all, an early happy Father's Day weekend to everybody. It's particularly exciting for me as I'm a new dad, so it's going to be kind of my first one. So very excited for that. I hope everybody has a great weekend and all of that stuff. So we're going to spend most of our time in GP today. As always, we have a quick PowerPoint just to set things up, let you know who we are. And for those of you who join every single one, I apologize if it's repetitive. I hope our banter is witty enough that you're not falling asleep because you hear it every time. But most of our time will be spent in GP today, and very little in this PowerPoint deck. Now, we cannot hear you. So if you have a question or we're losing you, please write in the question box. Just give us a little bit of a description of where we lost you, what's going on. It's going to be particularly important for today's session. We're going to be stopping about maybe, halfway or so through Sam's session, just to break to see if anybody has any questions so that we don't move on to more complicated items and, we've lost you. It's kind of that old, math way of thinking where if you aren't following in the early stage, you're going to get lost in the later stage. So we are going to be breaking about midway through the demo just to make sure everybody's with us and we're staying organized. But again, use that question box if we lose you. We're also going to be talking briefly about some next events. So we have an exciting one coming up in July. So that's going to be a topic of today. Then of course we'll end with questions. So most of the questions, unless they're we've completely lost you, will be kept till the end, as well as the giveaways. So today we're actually, instead of giving away caffeine, we're going to be giving away Amazon gift cards. Change things up a little bit. So first of all, who are we? So we are a Dynamics GP partner. We've been focused on GP for over 18 years. We love it. We're just really passionate about the product here. We do everything from implement GP, support customers that have already implemented GP, roll out new modules, upgrades, updates, everything that you could think of. I think what makes us pretty unique is, first of all, we actually give free support to our customers. So we give everybody 5 free hours a year just for having us as partner of record, which is a great way for you smaller GP installs out there of not needing to buy support packages or be billed, if you have questions or need help with year-end closing. So if that's something that interests you and you're not currently using us, of course, let us know. Be happy to work with you guys. We've also developed a product called GP365, which is the first software as a service version of GP. So essentially what that means is we take GP, we put it in the Microsoft Azure cloud, and we take care of all of the upgrades and updates. And essentially you just have access to GP wherever you are without having to worry about any of the underlying infrastructure. So it's been a really cool initiative that we've been working on with Microsoft. We're really proud of it. As most of you know who have been reaching out to get onboarded, we have about a 6-month wait right now for it. So it's been pretty busy for us, but again, it's exciting. We're making a lot of improvements to it. So again, if you're interested, let us know. And I think with that, I'm going to toss it over to you, Sam, to maybe take us through some workflow.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thank you, John. So hello, everyone. And again, as John mentioned, welcome to the workflow for welcome to the webinar for workflows. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that we have to cover. And most of the time we'll spend in GP, but I want to touch on a few things and just kind of explain to you how vast workflow is and how powerful it is and all the different things that it can do for us. So to start, there's a total of 18 different workflows that are spread out through different series. So the series listed that you see listed on the PowerPoint, financial, sales, purchasing, payroll, project, and administration, have at least one or more workflows within them. Now, for the most part, most of the workflows that a lot of users care about are in the financial, sales, purchasing, and payroll series. Of course, you can have other, the other workflows within the series. And just to kind of speak to that, I'll show you all the different types of workflows that you have within the series. So this might not be so easy to see, but just bear with me. So some of the more popular ones that we see, for example, in financial, are the two workflows that you're going to see in the financial series is the general ledger account approval as well as the general ledger batch approval. So essentially, what these workflows do is allow you to approve for general ledger batches before they're posted, so that you have more control as to what is being posted directly to the GL, and so that you don't have any surprises at year end when you're trying to reconcile, like, hey, why did this bypass my subledger? So this is one way that you can kind of control that. So this is very helpful in that regard. So whatever's being posted, if you have some employees that might be posting and there isn't a control in place, these workflows can be helpful with that regard. So that you have something there that prevents them from posting, and you can review it and say, like, okay, why are we doing this, and why can't we just do like an invoice or a transaction for it? All right. So that's the financial series. Under sales, we just have receivable batch approval. Again, same thing. It's just the batches that are created within GP that are approved. Now, the bulk of the workflows are in the purchasing series, just because there's so much stuff that you can do with it. Now, I don't want to go through and list every single one of these items that we're going to be doing, but we will be covering the purchase order approval workflow in our session today. So essentially what I'll be doing is I'll be walking you through and showing you what happens when you create a PO within GP, and if you have a workflow set up, how you can take it through the workflow process and take from one user to the next user. So these are the kind of things but other key things I want to touch upon that are pretty important in the purchasing series for workflows are your vendor approval. So when a vendor is being created within GP, you can actually pick and choose. You can actually set up a workflow so that the appropriate person is looking at it. And at the end of the year, I think one of the biggest issues that a lot of companies have is they have a lot of customers and vendors that are sometimes just repeating. And that's just because there isn't a control in place, there isn't a way or proper approval in place. So sometimes vendors get duplicated without anybody knowing. So this is one way that you can kind of prevent that by setting up a workflow. It has to get approved before. So maybe somebody new starts and they don't know that this vendor A is already within GP. So they're thinking that they try to find it, and for some reason or another, they're unable to find it. So with this workflow, what it'll allow you to do is before that vendor is approved and added to the workflow, you can have the employee send out a request to get this workflow approval done. So this way, if it's already there, you can go back to like, hey, we don't need a second one. We're okay. Why are we creating a second one? So that's one way that workflows can be very helpful in ensuring that you're not duplicating data and there's more control in place. All right. So that's the purchasing series. Under payroll, of course, there's the employee profile approval, the employee skills approval, as well as the time card. So again, if you've got a new employee starting and you want to improve their profile or have their skills approved, you can obviously add all this information within the workflows so that everything is being accounted for, and you can add multiple users to the workflows. So another thing that we'll be talking about when we're actually setting up the workflow within GP is how so maybe if we're looking at a profile, so let's say you get a new employee for your sales department. So the people who need to approve that person's profile, let's say, would be the HR person, the sales manager, and maybe even another individual if you like. So you can set up multiple people within the workflow. So you can set up like conditions, so such as if the employee is supposed to be reporting to X department, then this manager, and this manager need to approve it. Otherwise, go to this manager. So these are the different things that you could do within GP, and I'll show you how you can do that within GP, and we'll walk through the setup for that. All right, and of course we also have a project series, so you can set up expense report approvals as well as timesheet approvals. And lastly, administration. So if you have the SmartList Designer view approvals, you can also do that. And that I think will be very helpful for a lot of users, because sometimes when you're running SmartList, you see all of these different SmartLists that you've never created, and it can be it can kind of slow you down, because you're looking for something exact, and to have to go through this entire list can take some time. So this also gives you some control with regards to that. All right, so with that being said, there's another thing I wanted to talk about, and we'll do this when we're in GP, is the workflow participant. So let me go ahead and just jump right into GP, and we can see what we're talking about.
I'm sorry, just to jump in here. Which version of GP are we using today?
So we're using 2018.
Which is the latest?
Which is the latest, yeah. In order for users to have access to workflow, you need to have a GP 2013 and above. So the workflow got released in 2013, GP version 2013. So if you have GP 2013, you'll see workflow. Otherwise, you may not see some of the features, or you may not even see the workflow at all. All right.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out one other quick thing here before I rudely interrupt you again. So for those of you who aren't aware, GP 2013 is no longer under mainstream support with Microsoft. So if you're on version GP 2013 or before, you should definitely think about upgrading, as you're not in mainstream support. And I won't spend a whole lot of time talking about that, but essentially it means that your implementation of GP isn't within Microsoft's main guidelines. So if you need to phone them, something strange comes up, they're not going to be a whole lot of help. So definitely consider upgrading if you haven't already, not only for the features, but you got to at least stay on the latest mainstream version. So if you have questions about that, shoot me a note. But Sam, leave it back to you.
Awesome, thank you. So just one thing I wanted to talk about was the different participants within a workflow. So I don't know if you can see right now, but I'm actually logged in as a purchaser. So for this webinar today, we'll be jumping in between the person who's submitting the PO, the person who's approving it, and possibly even another manager. So for now, I'm going to log in as a workflow administrator. Essentially, this is a person who has access to, who sets up and maintains the workflow. So I'll go through the various participants that we have within the workflow. Okay, so the reason I'm not going through the workflow setup with the purchaser is because sometimes the purchaser may not have access to it. Now, in my case, I've also not given them access to the administration. I'm not giving them access to open up the workflow. So even if I try to, it wouldn't work. All right. So once I'm logged in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll over down to the administration pane here, or administration series here. Under setup, if I scroll to the bottom here, I'm going to see a section for workflow. So over here, if you just go and click on this arrow, you'll expand the workflow options. So I'm going to go and click on the workflow maintenance, and you'll see a screen right here. So now, at the moment, I'm already within the purchasing series, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a total of 18 different workflows. So if you wanted to go through each one of them, you can change the series, and you can go through them that way. But for now, for today's example, because we're going to be doing a purchase order approval workflow, we're going to focus on the purchasing series. So what I've actually already done is I've actually already set up a workflow. So as you can see here, if I click on the arrow there, you can see that I've already set up a workflow, and I've got 2 approvers on this workflow. So first things first, before we get into it, I want to talk about the different participants. So as I mentioned, now I'm logged in as a system administrator, or in this case, the workflow administrator. So I have access to, I can set up and I can maintain the workflow system. I have access to essentially all the pages on the workflow website, and I can perform all tasks. So that's essentially a system workflow administrator. Then you have somebody called a workflow manager. So in this case, you can see here for this workflow, the managers are Eitan Hassan or myself essentially, and this is a person who can basically create and configure a particular type of workflow. So given their access rights, they would be able to go in and modify the workflow for the purchase order that they were part of and they were a manager of. Okay. Then there's somebody called an originator. So this is a person who submits a document, and essentially this is a master record or essentially a batch for approval. So in this case, when we submit our POs for approval, the purchaser in this case, sorry, he will be the originator. And then we have the approver. An approver is essentially the person that's going to get the request from the originator, and they're going to go ahead and approve that request or reject that request based on whatever they feel is appropriate. And of course, they can also delegate. There's also a person who can delegate. Essentially, this is a person who can act who can act on a workflow task on behalf of someone else. So maybe, if I've added multiple people, so I know maybe this person gets busy really fast and he may not be able to respond to a request to approve something right away. You could have a delegate, and essentially they'll go in and they'll delegate to the next available person in the workflow, or somebody else who could essentially go ahead and say, yeah, you're approved. Go ahead and post the PO. All right, and lastly, we have a user with just read-only access. Again, these are just users who are not involved in the workflow, but they need the ability to view documents, records, or batches submitted by the workflow. This could be somebody who just wants to make sure that, if they're following up on something, so maybe a salesperson needs to follow up and make sure a particular transaction or an invoice is going out as it is going out. They could essentially be given read-only access to the PR workflow or the sales workflow just to make sure that it is being approved and it's being looked at. So that's somebody who would use a read-only access. All right. So now that we've got the different participants out of the way, and again, as I'm going throughout the webinar, I'll just to drive the point home, I'll talk about okay, I'm now working as a purchaser, who in this case is the originator, and so on and so forth. All right. So when you want to create a workflow, the first thing you want to do is you want to select the workflow that you want to create first. So in this case, because I'm creating a workflow for purchase order approval, I select this, and at the top here, you're going to select new workflow. When a new workflow is generated, you'll get a little option here. Now, one cool thing I want to show you is, so when you hit new workflow, you get this little exclamation mark, and you'll notice that this one has an exclamation mark, and this one has a little plus sign beside it. So at this moment, even if I was to save it, so let's just go ahead and let me just go ahead and show you what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and hit save workflow. You can see here, it doesn't have the check mark beside it. And the reason for this is because this workflow is not active. So this is a common mistake that a lot of users, when they're setting up workflow, come across, is they say hey, I've set up the workflow and I've created everything, but I don't see an option to send anything to the workflow. So the reason for that is because the workflow has just not been activated, and it's just because it's a small radio button, so sometimes it can be missed. So I'm not afraid to admit it. I basically set up my workflow and was like, how come it's not there? It was because I forgot to activate it. So just something to be mindful of. I've seen a lot of users come across this, and it's so tiny that even the most experienced users will forget this. So just be mindful of that. All right. So now that I've got my workflow here, I can assign steps to it. So steps, essentially, in this case, you can see in this one here, this is the workflow or for approver one, which in this case is John. So John is supposed to be the one that's supposed to approve it. Well, okay, so the description says John, but you can see that it's assigned to myself. That's fine. So I'm going to be the one that's going to log in and approve it. So again, just to make sure that we're clear, I'm logged in as the workflow administrator, not as the manager. So in this case, as I'm speaking as a workflow administrator. All right. So I've set a condition here which says that any time that the purchase order line's extended cost is less than $4,000, it needs to go to this person, which in this case is myself. And of course, anytime it exceeds, it needs to go to the next person within the workflow. So we can see here, I don't need to save any changes. We can see here, so anytime a purchase order exceeds the $5,000 limit, it actually goes to John, and he has to approve it. Now, I'll walk through the different items that we have here, but let's just go back, and I want to show you a couple of things. So these are the different steps that you have, and you always get a quick little summary that lets you know what the condition is, who the approver is, and who's assigned to. So in this case, the managers that we had selected. So the first one, of course, was myself. The first one, of course, was Aitzem. So he was the one that was assigned that task when we first sent it out for approval. And the second one, when the purchase order is greater than $5,000, it'll go to John Poznan. All right. So we also have a couple of options at the bottom here. So this is essentially workflow has the ability to send out notifications to users when they approve a work when they submit something for approval. So let me go ahead and actually show you one of the emails that you would get. So when you actually send out a workflow, you can choose an email that will be sent out to the person who's submitting the approval. So I've kind of blanked out a couple of things here, but you can see here, for example, this is a sample email of what it would look like, and you can of course customize this and configure this as you would. But we have too much to cover, so it's best to just kind of show you where you can do it. And you can see here, it also gives you the option to approve, reject, and delegate. So this is the email that would be generated once you submit something for approval and you send out an email. All right. So this essentially allows you to also pick the notification. So if I click on this arrow here, you can choose what email or what message gets sent out. So these are all the messages that we have set up. And if you want to, and I'll show you after I'm done explaining, I'll show you where you can set up those messages and you can add the various items, but we won't set anything up. All right. The next option is to allow the approver to delegate tasks. So for example, if I'm over here and maybe I don't have enough time to go through the PO, but by having this option, I can delegate this task to somebody else who might be able to. So again, if for example John is really busy and he's not able to look at a purchase order, by having this option, John can tag somebody else into the workflow or let them know like, hey, can you look at this for me? And if everything's okay, just go ahead and approve it. So because John was busy, this gives him that flexibility. The workflow gives him that flexibility to kind of tag somebody else in, just so that it is being looked at and nothing is being missed. All right. The other option we have is to allow the originator to be an approver. So in this case, if there was a purchasing agent that was submitting there was a purchasing agent who was submitting a PO. This option would allow that person to approve their PO themselves. So if you don't want to do that, just unselect this. All right. And the other option is to always require at least one approver. So this makes sense. You want to make sure that any PO which is approved at least has at least one approver that has gone in and said like, yeah, this is good. Go ahead and sign it off. All right. So this option will make sure that in order for the purchaser to post or receive items against that PO, there has to be at least one person who has approved that PO. All right, and you can also use a alternative for a final approver. So maybe in the case neither John or myself could look at the workflow, we could tag somebody else in to go in and just kind of approve it. So maybe for example, if Jason wanted to do it, he could be attached to the workflow and he could do it. All right. And the other option is when a task is overdue, you can tell the system what it should do. So do you want it to take no action, escalate to the next approver, or you want to escalate to a specific person, or automatically reject the overdue task. So again, because the workflow because everybody's busy, in this day and age, and this is going to help you guys. Sometimes you're not able to look at something. Maybe you got stuck on a meeting or stuck on a call and you just weren't able to go in and look at something. So by having this option, it allows you to go to the next step and not worry about that. All right. So these are different options. And then the other thing I want to talk about again, so once you set up the approver, which of course, when you're setting up the approver, by the way, instead of doing new workflow, you want to select new step and you'll add the various steps. So over here, because in this one, I am the manager for this one. So it's the first time. So anytime a purchase order less than $5,000 is sent for approval, it'll come to me, and this is the time limit I have. And the other thing you can do with a time limit is you can actually set up a calendar within GP. So that'll let the system know like, hey, these are our business hours, so this is when you should start counting the time. So for example, if a PO was sent to you for approval on 4 o'clock on Friday, that person maybe the person has already gone for the day or not going to have a chance to look at it. So when they come back on Monday, it'll have, as opposed to having 8 hours on that day, they'll have 7 hours to approve that PO. So GP is very smart with that regard. All right. And you can also choose when to send out a reminder email. So maybe you want to send out a reminder email at 4 hours within. So like, hey, you still got these POs outstanding, please approve them. And of course you can override this. So instead of maybe saying 4, maybe I'll say maybe send the reminder after 6 hours. So 2 hours before it's due to get a reminder, just so that they know like, hey, it's coming due, please have a look at it. And of course, here, this is also where you can pick the messages that you've created to send to to be sent along when you submit something for approval. And you can also include document attachments, which allows you to submit which allows you to have the documents and submit them to the person so they have the full information. All right, and of course the completion policies can sometimes be only one response is required, or multiple approvals may be required, or all must approve. So for example, if you want 2 people to approve, you want to select multiple approvals, and obviously you'll add that in the list. All right, so this is essentially the setup for your workflow. And again, once you're ready to set up the workflow, make sure you activate it, and once you're done, just go and hit save. So we're going to now walk through an example of where a purchaser is going to go in and set up an approval. But as I was mentioning earlier, I wanted to talk to you guys about the calendar. So see here at the bottom, you can just click workflow calendar, and I've told GP our business hours, which are of course from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And of course you can tell the system. So if your business hours are a little bit different, you can tell them so the system knows when to start counting for the reminders. Okay, so this is where you can go and set that up. All right, the other thing is of course the email message setups. So for example, if you want a particular message ID, you can look at it and you can see this is a document which is generated. So the sample that I showed you would essentially be set up this way, and this will pull in particular information from that PO. All right, so I'm not going to walk through how to set that up, but this is essentially where you would go in and set up your email messages. All right, so now that the workflow is set up, we're going to go and do a PO. So I'm going to log in as a purchaser. So in this case, I am purchaser and my name is purchaser. I'm very clever with names. Okay, so the purchaser is going to go in and he's going to create a PO. Once he creates a PO, he's going to submit that. He's going to submit that for approval, and then the person who is going to be sent to, depending on the cost of the PO, will go in and will approve it. All right. So the purchaser is going to do it. He's going to enter the PO as he normally would. So he's going to go to the purchasing series here. He's going to go to the transactions, purchase order entry here, and he's just going to enter a PO. All right. So the standard PO. I'm just going to hit tab. All right, let's add a buyer ID. Terry Adams. Okay, let's select a vendor. So vendor in this case is a travel company. Okay. All right, everything looks good. And this is related to project ADP. Yep. This is for this cost code. This is the item. Okay. And maybe we're going to order, we're going to order 5 units. Okay, so we've got this cost code at a cost of $566.10 per unit. And I'm also going to go ahead and just enter in a site ID. So I want this to be delivered here. Perfect. So we can see our total cost is $2,830. So just a reminder, so when we set up our workflow, anytime the cost exceeded $5,000, that's the point when, John or somebody else would log in and say like, okay, we're going to get this done. So in this case, now that I've entered everything in here, all I'm going to do is, let me just go ahead and delete this line. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit submit at the top here. Okay, so I'll submit a comment on the work for what I'm submitting. Please review and approve the purchase order. All right, this is just so that they're having a look at, because you could even go in and say like this is for job number 123, whatever it is. Just so it's something to when somebody's looking at it, if they want to like, okay, I know what this is how you could use that comment functionality. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit submit, and it's going to go ahead and submit something. Now, if you set up emails, it would send out an email to that appropriate person. But in this case, given the limitation of time, we weren't able to set up given the limitation, we would not set up email. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to see, I know because it's under $2,000, so it's going to go to me. But if you ever wanted to see, who the person is that it's assigned to, I can bring out that PO again. And if you click on view history, it gives you the little option here. So you can see this is our PO. So at the moment, it has not been approved. So you can see here, it's just sitting here. All right. So the originator is myself, and it's been assigned to this user. So this is the person that has to go in and and approve the PO. This person, of course, will then go in and reject the PO. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as, oh, wait a minute. Let me go and resubmit this. All right. And I'm going to log in as ATEM, and then we're going to go in and approve this PO. All right. Okay. So again, we're going to go to the purchasing series, and we're just going to pull up that PO, and we can see that we'll be able to approve it. All right. So I'll go to purchasing here, and I'll just go to purchase order entry here. I'll go ahead and select that PO. So if I click on the lookup icon there, select that PO, I can see here I have the PO. Okay. Hang on a second. Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry. So I actually forgot to, I made one mistake with the workflow. I enabled one of the options. That's why it keeps on rejecting it. So let me just go back and get that fixed, and then we'll go ahead and submit a new one. Okay. I saved one of the changes where it said it needs a final approval, so that's why because it didn't find it, we didn't set one up. It kept on automatically rejecting it based on what we had set up in our settings. So I'll go back into my to my workflow here. Yeah, so I just want to make sure. Okay. And we're just going to save the workflow. Okay. So again, I'll log in as a purchaser again. We'll just do this example again. And this time the purchaser is going to go ahead and submit another PO, and we'll get it approved. And the other thing I wanted to show you guys is, so because of the purchaser, obviously you want to restrict who is or is not able to post POs. You'll see here, because the PO is not yet submitted for approval, the purchaser is not able to go in and approve it. He's not able to go in and post it and recognize line items against the purchase order. So again, we'll go ahead and create a PO. So we'll create a PO here. All right, so again, it's not yet been submitted. We'll find our buyer ID. This is our vendor. And this is going to be again for, okay. And you know what, this time let's order 6 units. Great. Perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and submit it. But first, I wanted to show you one more thing. So if you click on the actions drop down here, you'll see based on the restrictions that we have for this purchaser, they're not able to go in and post it or recognize invoice lines against this PO. And you can also attach documents to this, and you can submit that through the workflow. So I'll just go ahead and attach a document. So I'm going to hit save and hit attach. Okay, this is what I want to be sent along with the PO. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go ahead and submit this workflow. So please approve. Perfect. And I know again this is less than $5,000, so I'll log in as ATEM, and then he will go in or as a manager in this case, and he's going to go in and approve the PO. Okay, so we're going to go to purchase order. So you've got our new PO here, 281. And essentially, you would be able to, at this point, review the attachment. So if I click on the attached, I can see what was attached to it. I can preview it. I can download it, and I can just to kind of see what we have. Yeah, let's do Word. Okay, so once you approve it, you can send it back to the purchaser, and then the purchaser will be able to go in and will be able to assign. Will be able to go in and they'll be able to modify. They'll be able to go in and they'll be able to post the purchase order, and it'll be approved. All right. So this is essentially where it's going to. This is just a document that we have. So for the purpose of time, we're just going to move on from that. So again, so I'll log into the purchaser. Oops.
I don't see any questions yet, but let us know if we've lost anybody. Oh, I think I may see one here.
All right. So actually, let me go ahead and actually just, you know what, we'll send this one to John. Why not?
Okay, so Mark, I see your question. If you don't mind, I'm going to come to it at the end, so just hang tight for now.
All right. So we've got our PO, and you can see here that it says approver 2. In this case, this PO is waiting for John to go ahead and approve it. So it just lets them know who needs to log in to approve it. So again, I'm just going to log in as John. Okay. John can't seem to remember his password, so I don't know what's going on, John.
Oh, Sam, always forgetting your passwords, or in this case, my password.
Yep. There we go. All right. So again, so I'm just going to go into the purchase order, purchasing series, go to the purchase order, bring up that purchase order. And you know what? John's feeling nice today, so he's going to go ahead and approve that purchase order. He says, yeah, that makes sense. Go ahead and approve it. All right. So to approve it, so what you can do is you can obviously have a look at the PO and just click on the workflow dropdown, and you have the option of approving it, rejecting it, or delegating it. So in this case, if we were to reject it, it will reject it back to the purchase order, to the purchaser, and the purchaser would have to go in and obviously make the changes. So when you do reject it, you get an option to put in your comments, and it lets the user know why you may have rejected it. But in this case, let's go ahead and approve it because it's going to be nice. And we're going to say, approved, please process. So now when I log in as a purchaser in this, I will now be able to go in and move to the next step, which of course is to post a PO and to receive items against the PO. So I'll log in as a purchaser again. And these passwords are going to be the end of me.
Man. Oh,
so, you know,
now you're a bit nervous, so you're just going to fall to pieces.
Yeah.
I'm not making it better.
There we go. I knew it.
There we go. Third time's the charm.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so now the purchaser is going to go in and he'll see that the PO has been approved, and then he'll essentially go to the next step and approve the PO. All right, so we're going to go to the purchasing screen, purchasing series here, open up the purchase order screen. I'm going to select that PO from the drop-down, which of course I know is 281. And you can see here, PO approval complete. And if you ever wanted to view the history of it, you can always click that and it'll show you what happened. So we can see here, we submitted the PO and the approver went in, and in this case, because the first approver was the manager, when the PO was less than $5,000, it's telling you that there's no action required from that assigned user. But on the second option, of course, there is the final approval required, and he needs to go in and approve it. So this just kind of gives you a history of what happened. So if you ever wanted to see, why, what happened, why did we cancel it, why did we go back so many times, the history kind of lets you know that. And of course, maybe the purchaser made a mistake, like, oh wait, I didn't need to get all this approved, and he needs to get this fixed. He can just hit recall, and that'll do it. But essentially, this would essentially restart that workflow process all over again, and it was submitted for approval, and you can send it out that way. All right. But we're going to assume that everything was okay and this purchaser is ready to move on. So we're going to click on the Actions tab here, and you can see here we have additional options now. So we can actually receive the PO items, receive and invoice items against this PO. So of course, we'll go ahead and do that. And essentially, this is the workflow. So this is where the purchaser, in this point, essentially it's been approved. He'll just go in and move right along and do what he needs to do. So again, this is what he would do. So, and he would just process the invoice and so on and so forth. So that in a nutshell is essentially the workflow within GP. Now, I did a very basic one, but of course, there's a lot of different moving parts and different components that make up the workflow. For example, the email alone is a little bit more complex because there are templates and items that you need to set up, so that it does work out correctly. So with that being said, I'm going to now pass it back over to John, and he'll just kind of tell you about our next event. And I think we might have a few questions. No?
We do. So we're going to come to the questions in just a couple minutes. I have kind of just two quick things to talk to everybody about. So the first one is Management Reporter. So we're running an event in July. This is probably our most requested topic, maybe ever. So definitely register. There's about 23 spots left as of, I think, this morning or maybe yesterday. So either way, if you're interested in Management Reporter, you use it right now, please join. We're also going to be talking a little bit about Power BI. So as some of you may know, there's now a Power BI pack for GP, which gives you a whole bunch of analytical abilities. So we're going to talk briefly about that. There's going to be another session, probably maybe in August or September, that focuses specifically on Power BI. So if reporting is your thing, Management Reporter, you don't want to miss this one. So you can go to our typical gp365.ca website, and then you can sign up in the training or webinar section of our site. So the next thing I'm going to ask everybody for is I need your help. So we've covered, sorry, Sam, if you could just scroll back one more slide.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So I need everybody's help here because we've covered quite a few topics. And it's not that we're running out of topics, but we want to know sort of what you guys are interested in. So I'm going to put a poll up here just to figure out what it is that you guys would like to see covered in the next couple of months from a topic perspective. And if I don't have the topic that you think would be a good one here, if you could just email me, whatever the topic is that you'd like me to cover, my email will be at the end. So a very quick poll. So topics that we would cover next, project accounting. So that's a pretty popular one for those of you that have any project accounting related needs. So timesheets, anything like that. Another one that we were thinking was top 5 GP add-ons. So there's quite a few add-ons out there. It's easy to get lost in the ones that everybody uses versus the ones that nobody uses. So we were thinking about bringing some definition to that. Power BI. So of course, this is all about reporting, one of Microsoft's new big investments. So if you're interested in that. And the last one is Report Designer. So I'm going to close this poll up here in just a few seconds. So far, the winners are Power BI and Project Accounting. Well, it's pretty even, actually. All right, so I am gonna, sorry, still see lots of votes coming in here. All right, so we're going to close the polls, share the results quickly. Oh, Sam, I think that was actually one of the topics that you requested, report designer. So either way, I think all of these, or at least the top 2 or 3, we're going to add to the list of topics. So check back on our registration page on GP365. You'll probably see dates for all of these topics up there. So please register if you're interested. Hope to see you guys on, and we'll go from there. Okay, so moving right along. Sam, you can move on to the next slide. So I just quickly wanted to mention that we often post the recordings of these sessions on the resources section of our site. So if you missed the last session, which was on, what was that one on? Document Attach? Is that what it was on, Sam? Yeah, Document Attach. So if you guys missed that one, I think it was it was a few weeks ago. That's a good one. That one's on live or online now on our site, so you can go check it out, watch the video, and get to check out all of our corny jokes and awesome demos. So let's move on maybe to some questions. I think would be a good next step. Yeah. All right. So I think Mark's question was first. So bear with me here. The screen's kind of small. If Workflow sends an email to an approver, but she's away, and another approver knows, but they're not on the workflow, can the other approver just go in and approve the batch?
So, sorry, if
you want me to say it again?
Workflow sends an
if Workflow sends an email to an approver, but she's away, and another approver knows, but they're not on the workflow, can the other approver just go in and approve the batch?
Yeah, you can. What you can do is when you have that workflow. So just like how I had the workflow, I had 2 people on it. So if, for example, John was away, the manager could have gone in and they could have delegated the task at that point. So you can do that.
All right.
You just have to get somebody on the workflow to delegate that task, essentially.
Cool. Next one is from Crystal. How will the purchaser know when the PO has been approved? And Mark, if we didn't do if that wasn't what you were looking for there, maybe just shoot me a note and we can sync up over email or a call and make sure that we answer your question full capacity. So again, how will the purchaser know when the PO has been approved? From Crystal.
Yeah, so it is, as long as you've got your email set up, essentially when you submit something for approval, the manager or the person who's supposed to approve it will get an email. Now, in the other instance, if you're on the other end, essentially you're the purchaser. Once it's been approved, you'll also receive an email indicating the PO number and the status of it. It'll just let you know, like, hey, action has been taken. Please go in and review it, depending on, of course, how you set up that email to be sent back.
Cool. We have another one from Allison. How does everyone handle unapproved invoices in purchasing transaction entry? What resources do people use to tell them what's unapproved at any point in time?
So what you can do is, like if you're looking for a particular batch or particular invoice, you can look at the workflow history and you'll be able to see it that way. I believe you can also actually create smart lists and it lets you know which. You can create a smart list which will let you know, hey, this batch or this particular item is still waiting to be approved. It won't necessarily say who it's waiting for. That one wouldn't tell you to dig in further, but it will give you an idea as to how many batches are still waiting approval.
Cool. So hopefully that answers that for it was Allison. So the next one, I can't see your full name. It looks like it's cut off. I think it's Maha Bub, I think it is, but it's cutting off some of your name. So I apologize for butchering your name. But it's a great question, which is GP Web Services a requirement in order to use the approve or reject from the email that Workflow sends out? So that's a technical one, Sam. I don't know if you would know that or not, but.
Sorry, is GP Web Services a requirement in order to be approved or reject from the email that Workflow sends out? It is technical, but if I believe I'm understanding this question correctly, you essentially need to have a license for Outlook or whatever you're using has to be set up in order for you to use that. Otherwise, it doesn't know what you're linking it to, and I do believe you need access to the web service in order for it to do that, because it obviously connects through the internet, and it's gonna send the email via Outlook. So I do believe you need access to it.
Okay. Cool. I'm going to take one more question here from Mark, and then we may have to come back to the other ones later, just because there's quite a few. So anybody who put a question there, we are going to answer it. We'll email you guys privately, make sure that we get them all taken care of. So Mark, can you set up 3 approvers in a workflow and the first available approves? Another good question.
Can you set up, so you can set up as many approvers as you like. Obviously, you just want to differentiate based on what the item would be. So, for example, in my example, I just said less than $5,000 as a PO, and then more than $5,000. You could have multiple stages, so you can even say from $5,000 to $20,000. This is the person, and then so on and so forth. And the same thing would apply again in those instances. If the person is not available or is on vacation, another person on that workflow you can set it up so that it goes to the next. If the time limit expires, you can set it up so that the person who's next in the workflow will get the notification, and they can go in and say, okay, this is approved, this is not approved. So you can set up as many people as you like.
Cool. So I think maybe that's good. We'll jump to.
Oh, sorry, hang on. I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, hang on. I think Mark had one question. Yeah. Can you send the approval request to all 3 approvers at the same time? I think that's what his request was. So it only allows you to add one manager for a workflow. You can set up different approvers, but you're only allowed to add one person who's responsible for that workflow, because you wouldn't have 2 managers approving one workflow. So you're only allowed one, but you could set it up so that the 3 approvers could essentially send that out.
Perfect. Oh yeah, I guess that was Norman's question. Apologies. So many questions came in. I got scrambled.
Yeah.
So just before we maybe move on to the giveaways, I just wanted to quickly shout out Dennis. Dennis is a new customer of ours. So Dennis, thank you for joining, and also of course using us. Great to have you. Appreciate the support and the giveaways. So again, 2 $50 gift cards to Amazon. So for those of you who are from Canada, it'll be to the Canadian site, and for those of you from the US, it'll be to the US site. So the 2 people that we're giving away is Rick F. and Sandra G. So you guys will hear from me not today, but you'll hear from me tomorrow. So again, that's Rick F. and Sandra G. Appreciate the support, everybody. Thank you for giving us a piece of your Thursday. And we hope to see you guys on the next session, which is in July on Management Reporter. Anybody has any questions, email me. Need a GP partner, think of me. Thank you so much for the support, and we'll see you guys in just a little bit. Sam, thanks for all the help.
Thank you guys. Yeah.